Hi, my name is Brianne DiMarco, and I am an author with Blue Forge Press. And today I want to talk to you about a story that I have in Unnerving. This is an anthology, and it's 12 stories for a monthly dose of shivers. So we love Halloween. And we like spooky things, but we like them all year. So we decided, why not do a collection of stories that is spooky for every month of the year. I took May, so mine is called Burn. And my first inspiration for the story was the idea of Mayday or Beltane, which is actually my cat's name also. That's kind of where it started, and I feel like it kind of took on a life of its own. And I won't go too much more into it. And I think also in my mind I was thinking Midsummer, which is not May at all. But it's just kind of something that was in the back of my mind when I started writing the story. But it did take on a life of its own, and I would like to share that with you guys today. I'm going to be reading you my story. This is called Burn. Light filtered through the trees, casting colorful shadows as the sun set past the rising mountainside. I sauntered carelessly down the narrow forested path, a bottle of peach schnapps in my hand and my sister walking beside me. The many layers of my dress hid against the tops of my boots as I walked, and I spun, watching the dark layers separate and flow around me as I turned. We were giddy and excited, a little tipsy already, and feeling the magic of the mid-spring night. The music coming from the end of the trail was just barely audible, but deep bass beats vibrated under our feet. The leaves above us rustled, and a chill ran across my back. "It's getting really fucking cold," Willow complained, letting go of my hand to reach for the bottle of schnapps. She took a swig. Much better." I laughed and grabbed the bottle back. "I told you it was going to get cold." I tipped the bottle back, enjoying the warmth on my throat and in my stomach. Willow groaned dramatically. "Yes, Mom. And," I continued, "that you should bring a coat." Looking down at her costume, she scoffed. She was wearing a burgundy and gold lace crop top and a high-waisted skirt with a handkerchief hem. It was beautiful and perfect for tonight, but made of very, very thin material. "And cover all of this up?" she tisked. "Fuck that," she added, flipping her hair over her shoulder defiantly. Loose curls and tiny braids with beads and charms fell down her back. I laughed a loud guffaw that startled a group of ravens high in the trees. They flew suddenly, their wings loud as they cut through the air. My breath caught in my throat. "I heard Jay wanted to do a bonfire," Willow mentioned, breaking the silence. I took a breath and another swig of alcohol. "And what's with his Wiccan thing?" "Still trying to piss off his Catholic dad. Fuck if I know." She shook her head. "Honestly, no clue. You'd think he'd be past this whole rebelling against daddy thing." Willow shrugged and crossed her arms, bracing against the cold chill of dusk. I laughed. "Honestly, I think it's just an excuse to party more. I mean, I'm not mad about it. I love this witchy, spooky fairy vibe." I sighed. "Can't we just run off into the woods and leave our jobs and bills to the mere mortals?" Willow grinned. "Fuck yes." "But anyhow," I continued, "according to him, we're celebrating Beltane." Feigning a serious dude tone, I added, "And fire is absolutely mandatory." Willow continued my impression. "Fire is like my element. It's creative, but destructive, and like so powerful." "That is so him." We cracked up and I shoved at her jovially. Catching my breath, I added, "I won't lie, though. It's one of the things I love about him. Whatever he's into, however fleeting, he's all in, and passionate as hell." Willow glanced back at me, hesitant but clearly curious. "Are you and Jay?" "We're whatever," I answered noncommittally. "I don't know. We're nothing official or exclusive." My voice trailed as I looked away, my gaze drifting up and over through the huge old-growth maples. Branches dripped in moss, reaching up toward the ever-darkening sky. "Apparently," I finished, muttering under my breath. Willow laughed, stealing the schnapps again. "Monogamy is overrated, and so is Jay." I frowned, irritated by my sister's words. I reached for the bottle, grumbling, "Give that back." Spinning just out of reach, Willow turned around and walked backward in front of me. "I will only give this back," she declared, gesturing dramatically with the bottle, "if you promise to ignore the boys or girls or whoever and have a fucking excellent Beltane with me. She held the bottle out in front of her, letting the liquid rock back and forth inside the glass. There's only a couple of shots left. I rolled my eyes but smiled in spite of myself. Fine. I reached for the bottle again, but Willow pushed it out of reach. Willow stopped suddenly and I almost ran into her. Promise me, Willow urged, her voice low and suddenly serious. Her eyes were wide and looked a little wild, like an animal the moment before they make a fight or flight decision. I frowned. Stop being weird. I promise, okay? Grinning, Willow tossed the bottle at me. She spun on her heel, continuing down the trail. I shook my head, laughing, and followed her. Sorry about my brother, the guy across from me apologized. He thinks he's Skrillex or something. He handed me the end of the hookah hose. I took it, inhaling the thick smoke, molasses and roses mixed with marijuana. He went to Electric Forest once, and he's been doing this. He gestured vaguely around them, monthly ever since. His hair was dyed a vibrant cobalt, the top braided while the underside was cut short. He glanced over his shoulder and I saw that the braid went halfway down his back. Prosthetic costume horns curled out from his head, black with veins of blue that matched his hair. I realized I was staring and looked around at the people milling around us. I wasn't sure where Willow had gone. I love it, I said, a little distracted. It wasn't a lie. I took another hit from the hookah and handed it back, leaning against the tree behind me. He's not half bad, and his lighting rig is seriously sick. He nodded slowly. It's all right, he acknowledged. I'm Zane, by the way. Alex, I sighed. This is such a perfect night. This week just sucked, you know? My boss has been on top of me about everything. Customers have been literally the worst, and my coworkers are useless when they show up. I exhaled slowly. I really needed this. I paused, realizing I'd been rambling. Shit, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overshare, I added, turning to him. He was gone. I looked around, but I was alone, sitting under a cluster of trees on the edge of the party. The forest above was alive with light and color, moving and shifting with the music. If I stared long enough, my eyes unfocused just a little, and I could almost see the branches moving and weaving through the canopy. I blinked, and the branches were still again. Something darted in the corner of my vision, and I turned to see what it was, but saw nothing. I leaned back against the tree and looked back up to the canopy. The colors seemed to sparkle and shine as they shifted color, and I reached out, trying to catch a piece of the glitter with my hand. It slipped away and blinked out of existence. The world was a kaleidoscope of color and leaves and heavy bass beats. I moved among the other dancers, the beat a pulse that moved them all as one, an ocean rising and falling. I reached my hands above my head, watching the light that trailed from my fingertips. There was a delay, so it was almost like I was seeing an echo of where my hand had been as I was moving it. The beat picked up, and I could feel the energy of the crowd rising, impatient and waiting for the bass to drop. When it finally did, it was like a dam of light and sound and emotion was released. I tipped my head back, staring up at the sky and the colorful canopy above me. I felt connected with everything around me. Trails of glittery light sparkled all around me, and I reached for them as they moved overhead, but they flickered out just before I could touch them. There was a palpable feeling of magic in the air, and I submitted to it, closing my eyes and welcoming the otherworldly vibes. Finally, I broke away from the crowd, half coherently searching for the cooler of water bottles I had spotted earlier. I stumbled over a couple under a blanket and hastily apologized while deliberately trying not to look at them. Once I was a few yards away, I started giggling. Hey, are you okay? Willow asked from just behind me. I spun and saw Jay. Oh, I frowned, tilting my head in confusion. I thought you were... Never mind. I shook my head, feeling foggy. You okay? Jay asked, reaching out to steady me. His hand felt electric on my shoulder, but I tried to ignore the feeling. Yeah, sorry. I'm fine, really. My cheeks burned, but I hoped the lights disguised it. I took in his outfit. He had dressed as a punk, fucked-up Peter Pan, pointed ears and all. Are you a lost boy? He only grinned impishly. It suits you, I admitted. I'm glad you made it, he offered, and his eyes held my gaze for a long, intense moment. He finally looked away, and I realized I had been holding my breath. I let it out slowly, the world feeling unstable and fragile beneath my feet. Hey, I found you. A voice came from behind Jay. He turned around and wrapped an arm around the guy from the hookah earlier. Zane. Their lips met and they kissed, quick but passionate. Oh. Jane turned to me, keeping an arm wrapped around Zane. Have you met Zane? Yeah, earlier. Hey, I said, nodding to him. I'm either too wasted for this situation or not wasted enough. My vision was no longer a kaleidoscope, but it felt like there was a fog just behind my eyes. I was just on my way to find some water, I get out, excuses jumbling in my head. And have you seen Willow? I've been trying to find her. I trail off, looking around for her again. I think I saw her over by the bonfire, Jay offered. Which way is that? I asked, looking around. The lights were beautiful, yes, but they made the forest disorienting. We'll take you, Jay insisted, linking his arm in mine. M'lady, Zane added, bowing and offering his arm. How in the hell did you find this place, Jay? I asked, staring up at the canopy as we went down the path. Zane scoffed. Jay didn't find shit. Fuck you, Jay retorted, but he laughed. My brother is a park ranger, Zane told me. He's stationed here right now, and there's nobody allowed overnight. Except us. He grinned. Sweetest perk of being related to a nerd. I spun as I walked, enjoying the dizzying feeling, keeping my eyes on the sky as I turned. Jay laughed again and took a swig from a flask. An ego nerd at that. He says while wearing a costume in May. I suddenly stopped and pointed at him. You, my good sir, are a nerd. Jay coughed, his second swig spraying something noxious. It smelled like licorice and rubbing alcohol. I am not, he choked out. Zane laughed, reaching into his pocket. Guess what I brought? He trailed off, his amber eyes glinting in... I missed a word. His amber eyes glinting as he pulled out a Ziploc bag. You fucking hobbit, Jay got out, still coughing a little. Mushrooms, Zane said in a perfect Billy Boyd impression. I laughed at their ridiculous antics, but shook my head. I don't know, my head is still kind of spinning from the hookah, I admitted. Zane spun, his long black coats flying out from his body as he moved, putting his hands on his hips playfully as he blocked our way forward. Time to take your medicine, my dear, he teased, a grin on his face. My vision spun for a moment and I closed my eyes. Time to take your medicine, dear. The voice was soft and feminine. There was a low hum and a steady beeping, almost mechanical. I felt a wave of warmth and calm. The sounds faded and I opened my eyes. I leaned back against Jay comfortably, my head resting on his chest. I could feel the steady thump of his heartbeat beneath my head. My vision was a kaleidoscope again, lights and trees and trails of glitter. A shortcut, I giggled. I heard Willow laugh. I turned my head and saw her lying next to me, weaving daisies into a chain. A large wool blanket was spread out under us. Zane was lying with his head in my lap, looking up at the sky. As I looked around, I realized we were in a clearing, further from the music and the crowd. I followed Zane's gaze upward and watched as galaxies shifted and shooting stars traced Celtic knots in the night sky. Zane shifted a little, and as he moved, light glinted against his horns. I traced the lines of them, memorized. They were cold and felt almost like marble or granite under my fingertips. They look so real, I murmured, not really speaking to anyone in particular. I reached where they met his hair and expected to find something underneath, a clip, glue, some structure to keep them in place, and found nothing. My heart raced and I looked back to Willow. This is a bad trip. It's just a bad trip. Try not to lose it. Everything is okay. Stay calm. The more you panic, the more you'll hallucinate. Willow? She turned sharply to look at me, recognizing the panic in my voice. There was something off. Something different. Something's wrong, I managed to get out. Willow glanced at Jay and then back at me, and it hit me. It was her eyes. Her eyes were green, unnaturally so, her pupils elongated like a cat's. Alex, what is it? She blinked and they were normal. My breath caught in my throat and I could feel my heart trying to pound its way out of my chest. Alex? Jay asked, his voice loud, so close to my head. I jumped and pushed myself away from them, scrambling off the blanket. My limbs felt heavy and I didn't dare stand. The three of them moved toward me and I screamed, holding my hands out in front of me. Willow glanced from Jay to Zane, then back at me. She looked genuinely concerned. Alex, honey, it's okay. It's just me. She inched forward cautiously, afraid of spooking me. It's Willow, she assured, touching her hand to her heart. It's your sister. 3 words. 3 words and it all fell apart. My breath caught in my throat and I started shaking my head. No, 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 no. Alex? Her brows creased and she reached for me. My words were barely a whisper. I don't have a sister. Willow stared at me for a long moment. She blinked and her eyes shifted back to feline. The 3 of them moved toward me again and I screamed, squeezing my eyes shut. The beeping returned, slow and steady. If I listened carefully, I could hear the other beeps from further away, just as rhythmic, just as steady. I tried to wiggle my toes and fingers, but my limbs were lead. The sound of soft footsteps caught my attention, and I stopped trying to move. The footsteps approached me, and I heard papers rustling from near my head. "Another one?" the voice muttered, irritated. "Fucking dime a dozen in here, aren't you?" I heard a pop and then a slow, low squeak of rubber against plastic. "Dream on, little dreamer." A sweet, thick drink passed my lips, tasting of berries and spices. It warmed me, and I blinked my eyes open. Willow held the goblet. "Drink," she encouraged. A thought passed through my mind that I should be scared. I wasn't. I sipped more, becoming more aware of my surroundings. We were still on the blanket in the clearing. Jay was behind me again, my head against his chest, propping me up. I turned, looking up at him. "When are we going to the bonfire?" I asked daftly, my head still muddled. He smiled, his teeth sharp and pointed. "Soon," he whispered. I reached up, feeling the point of his ear. It was warm beneath my touch. "Are you ready?" Zane asked. I turned toward him and my vision blurred. I blinked, trying to bring him into focus. "Ready?" The mead made my head swim, my thoughts slow and thick like honey. "You were my Beltane sacrifice, darling," he purred, his fingertips trailing down my cheek. My brows furrowed and I frowned. "Who are you?" I managed slowly. He leaned in, his face next to mine. His mouth curled and there was a glint in his eyes. "I am Beale." The whites of his eyes bled to black, leaving the amber irises to look like embers. I felt it, finally. Fear. They used to call it Beltane many years ago, a festival for the fire god. My heart began to race, and under the numbing effect of the mead, I felt panic. "Beltane is mine." He leaned in, kissing my cheek. "And so are you." I felt tears and shut my eyes tight. There were more voices now, hushed whispers and footsteps moving around me, and still the ever-present steady beeping. "It is imperative that we keep it as quiet as possible around the inmates." He cleared his throat. "Around the patients," the man corrected himself. "The simulation therapy is nearly indistinguishable from reality, but occasionally there can be sensory input that bleeds over. It's our job to keep that to a minimum. There's a chart at the head of each patient's bed. Most background information you'll need is here." He paused, and I could hear papers rustling. "This is Alex Lagan, patient WA2071. The patient was admitted 2 months ago after a report from a neighbor. She's classified as an ADSA patient. That's anxiety, depression, substance abuse. These are your most common cases here at the Northwest Center for Neurological Care." A quieter voice spoke up. Are they dangerous?" The first man laughed. "Absolutely not. For the safety of both the patients and the staff, we administer a proprietary paralytic amnesiastic sedative every 2 to 4 hours, dependent on patient needs. Any patient in our care, no matter their level of neurodiversity," he said the word as if it was dirty and cleared his throat, "is fully and completely involuntarily incapacitated as outlined in the DSM-7 and required by law." The papers were returned to their place above my head. "Let's move on," he directed, leading the group away from me. Words and phrases kept bombarding me as I tried to process what the man had been saying. Neurodiversity. Incapacitated. A report from a neighbor. Amnesiastic. Does that mean amnesia? I tried to remember something, anything, from before this moment in time, before waking up here, before the Beltane celebration. It was a blank. There was nothing. My heart started pounding as my panic rose. Did I have parents? A life? A job? I couldn't remember. I can't fucking remember. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't find my voice. I felt hot tears fall down from the corners of my eyes. "Did you adjust 2071 sensory output? I've had to dose her extra twice today." The voice sounded like it was coming from a room beside me. Yeah, I was just about to check on that one." There was the sudden loud sound of a drink being sucked through a straw. "I don't know how I'm going to make it through the rest of the shift. Kevin just dumped 12 new inmates on me." There was that word again. Inmate. Damn it. 2071's BP just spiked again. Hold on one sec. Footsteps moved toward me, and I heard the familiar pop and plunger squeak of what I could only assume was a syringe. My eyes opened as I felt the warmth rush through me again. Willow pressed the goblet to my mouth, and I drank deep. I caught her eyes and slowly shook my head. "This isn't real," I told her. My speech was slow, my words heavy. Willow stroked my hair, brushing it out of my face. She was sitting to my left and Beale to my right. "It's okay, Alex. It's just a bad trip. It'll all be over soon." My brows knitted, trying to understand. It's not real? You just had too much, she told me. You're too much, Beale whispered, leering at me. Drink, Willow instructed, pushing the goblet toward me again. She tipped it back, and the last of the liquid passed my lips. I looked at Beale. Too much? He leaned close to me. Hold out your arm. I lifted it, and it felt somehow both weightless and heavier than it should have been. He slowly traced his fingertips down the inside of my forearm, and I gasped as trails of fire appeared on my skin. They were hot, but didn't burn me. You experience too much. You hurt too much. You stress and ache and love and feel. He paused, catching my gaze. His irises burned bright amber, and I couldn't look away from them. You are passion. You are fire. You will burn up and burn them with you if I don't take you first. My skin felt hot, like the beginning of a sunburn. I looked down and saw the flames had spread from my forearm to the rest of my torso, and they were climbing down and across my dress. Beneath the numbing warmth of mead, panic was rising again. I forced myself to sit up, even as the world swam around me. I blinked furiously, trying to come to my senses. My face flushed with heat, and I felt confused and feverish. I stood, and the flames grew brighter, their tendrils dancing and leaping around me. The tendrils grew, blazing in a flash of white, and I screamed as I was engulfed in a tower of flames. Damn it, Jerry, I asked you to fix her sensory output, the nurse whispered angrily. Monitors beeped loud and erratically. You have to fix it now. Fuck. Shit, hold on. There was a furious typing and clicking as Jerry tried to fix the setting. Is it done? We have to call a code or we're gonna lose her. Seriously, Martha, I'm gonna lose my fucking job. Just fix it and I'll delete the log. Jesus Christ, Jerry. Okay, fuck, it's done. Call the... And that is the end of the story. So that is the most recent piece of fiction that I've written. I've written a short film since then, but in terms of like actual fiction, that is actually the last thing that I've written. I'm actually just about to start a writer's group, so I'm excited to jump right back into writing. I actually haven't read that story since we got the actual physical copy of the book, so that was actually kind of fun for me as well. So that story was inspired by some of my favorite stories. I love not knowing what's real. I think that's really powerful. I think an unreliable narrator, in this case someone who has been drinking all night and possibly doing mushrooms and smoking pot, and just you're not really sure with her what's real. She could be just having a bad trip. It could be just like she took way too much and like she's just out of her mind right now, or she fell asleep so she's passed out somewhere dreaming, or is she in a world where if you have mental illness you are taken out of society. That's a powerful idea. Not a good idea, but a powerful idea. And I love that there's not really an answer to that. It could be one, it could be the other. It kind of is left up to you. What do you think happened? One of the things that inspired this story, or part of the story, I'd say the ending, with the text and like it sounds like maybe they screwed something up. So that idea I really loved. It was used in a different way in a film called Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, which is my absolute favorite film of all time, which is hard because there's a lot of films that I really love. But the idea that, yes, we live in this world where there's tech that can do things and interface with our brains and our minds. Like, that's a cool idea, but like, let's play it out realistically. That likely is being run by a human, and humans aren't great all the time. Sometimes people slack off. Sometimes people aren't paying attention. Sometimes people fall through the cracks in a medical setting. And so that I thought was a really interesting idea, and I wanted to play with that a little bit. Kind of a little homage. I don't know what else to say. I don't know. I really love that story. I think that's one of my favorite things that I've ever written. I would love to hear if you guys have sat with me and listened to the whole thing. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Do you think you know the actual answer of what was happening? I don't know. I'm curious. Let me know. Well, thanks for sitting here with me. Bye.